also just walking around and things like that. So all at once, we have become a nation of terraces and balconies and windows, and you're talking to our next door neighbors from window to window, for example, and things like that, and which is very positive. It gives you hope. Like we have started seeing the positive in our neighbors and other, humanity, so to speak. Um, but it is serious. I don't know, like, and when we go to the supermarket, we do, not everyone admittedly, but a lot of us do put on masks and gloves that are definitely, it's a must. Like you cannot be touching things. And then like when you are at the conveyor belt for the cashiers, you put all your stuff, you go quickly through to the other end of it so that you're not standing right in front of the cashier, and then they scan your stuff and you pay. Ideally they want everyone to pay with a bank card, contactless and things like that, and not handle too much with cash and things like that.
Andy,
So yeah, that's what's
just a
happening.
heads up. No, just because probably you didn't notice, we're officially live on YouTube now.
Hey.
And so I just want to make sure I take a second. Make sure I take a second that anybody, because I end up doing it anyway, going on my phone and having people join us. So anybody that's like on Instagram, if you've been watching us already, please go over to YouTube. YouTube didn't want us to be great, but I think she kept talking about Italians singing, and now we have this positive vibe in the universe. So if everybody who wants to be a part of the chat, go straight to the link from Instagram or on my website if you're not following from there. ChadMcCoy.com is on the events page and the blog page. The link is highlighted, and I'll take all of your comments from there. Sorry, I missed the beginning of it, but we have it recorded, and I will post the whole thing as one whole video on YouTube afterwards. But to be a part of the chat, we have not tasted any wine yet, so make sure you join us there. All right, thanks guys on Instagram who've been following. See you over there.
Can you hear it? Can you hear it?
We can. Yeah.
Yeah, it's what time is it? Because it must be the resident DJ who started already.
Oh, I can't hear the music started?
Yeah, he's giving a pep talk at the moment. He's kind of, and I guess he does a little bit of a warm up thing. We start at 6. That's kind of like the unofficial start of when we sing and play. And he has lately started, doing it a little bit earlier, have a little warm up, and then at 6 it will be the song of the day, and then it will go on for a while, and then at 9 we all turn off all the lights and come out with the torches at the windows. That's kind of like a thank you to all the medical staff. We have that at 12 noon as well. Because they're doing the crazy work. We're just, I was saying like cabin fever, but in the end, like how often have we said like, oh my God, I don't want to go to work today. I just want to sit inside and binge watch something on Netflix or whatever, things like that. And we finally have a legitimate reason to do that. But it is definitely the medical personnel, the doctors, the nurses, everyone involved, and the people who work at supermarkets, the people who are growing our food, who are driving them into the cities, into our supermarkets, which are very well stocked. They're kind of risking themselves a little bit and during this time. So we really, you start noticing things. I mean, obviously this has always been true. They're doing amazing things, but now we're being more appreciative of them.
So let's just because we may have all new people joining us now that we're live, we're going to do a blitz intro around the squares, and then you could pick back up with your wine, Hande. Okay. After we finish. So again, I'm Chad McCoy from Cha Squared Hospitality. I do wine education, wine experiences, and wine tourism. I'm currently in New York City, based in Portugal, Lisbon, and Zoltan is right over here. I don't know if everybody has the same squares. I don't. have to say,
For me, he's there.
he's there.
He's up there for me.
He's up. Okay. Zoltan, my man Zoltan is next.
Hi, my name is Zoltan. I'm chatting you from Barcelona city. I am the same a wine educator. I am a wine writer too. I'm a wine author. I published a book which is called Wine Queen, about distinguished Spanish women in wine, which we will talk about another day. And now I am, here with you to share some experience about all kind of food and wine gastronomy experience, which I have in Barcelona city, a company called Food Lover Tour. The same situation. We have the lady from Rome here. I forgot the name. I'm super bad on names. And what we are doing is everything in food and wine. Of course, when we are locked down here, like 2 weeks ago, we have no activity from the end of February. But we will share all these experiences online. Which finally, wine, it's the typical language nowadays. It's connecting people, no? And the best way is through the wine.
My turn? Okay, so my name's Will. I'm from London, UK. And I've been in the wine trade now for probably 10 years. I studied at Plumpton College. If anybody knows that, it's a small college in the south of England near Lewis. And they specialize in wine production and wine business courses. So that's where I sort of got my sort of depth of knowledge. I also worked in a vineyard in the south of France for about 3 weeks, picking grapes of 110-year-old Carignan vines, which for me, being about 6'8" or over 2 meters tall, is quite a feat, especially in a 38-degree weather, which we had down there when I was there. So I started then after Plumpton working in independent retail. The Butler's Wine Cellar down in Brighton. I could shout out to them. There's an amazing local independent retailer there. If you are in Brighton, then definitely check them out. They also deliver online as well. It's a fantastic shop full of pretty much everything you can think of. After that, I moved into hospitality as a sommelier, where I stayed until now. I'm a food and beverage manager. So slowly worked up the ranks through that. But my big passion is wine. I love how it connects people and brings people from across the globe together for such instances like this, which is superb. So yeah, I'm happy to be here, and cheers. Yeah.
Okay, I'm Hande, better known as Vino Roma on all social media. That's for you, Zoltan. And I'm a certified sommelier and a wine educator here in Rome. About our specialty is Italian wines. And I've been doing this for over 12 years now. And now we are going to go on to taste the wine, I guess, after this reintroduction. Ciao, is that fine?
Yeah, let's do it. And let me just make a point to, since we didn't really get into why Italy, because we'll have to watch the recap to hear that. But those who just joined us for the first time today, Hande started with going into what's going on in Rome. She's based in Rome, Italy. And we had someone yesterday that was coming from the central Italy, Emilia Romagna area. And just what's the difference, what's happening. We're hearing live updates on CNN. Italy is already more death tolls than China. So the intention is that we all are tasting Italian wines in solidarity with Italy this weekend. And actually just highlighting what some of our favorite wines, favorite producers, favorite regions, and just making a way that we all can connect and have a moment to think about Italy during this time. Of course, we know every place is affected, and we'll hear from Zoltan about Spain, which will be for next week. Hopefully YouTube works. And we'll be live next week with Zoltan. So, but just right now, focusing our attentions. I'm all about positive energy. So we all send positive vibrations to Italy right now by drinking Italian wine. Is a way that we all can just continue to shed hope. And those who are in quarantine in Italy, if they're going a little star crazy, Hande talked about her going and making her rounds today on her terrace, so just making sure people know that we're thinking about them, and so they can talk to somebody else outside of their cat, their husband, So and bring some joy to people's lives. So yeah. So moving on, we'll start doing the tasting, and Hande is going to showcase her wine first.
Yeah. I want to say one thing before I go into the specific wine. Thank you for mentioning that there are all these people that we need to support at the moment in Italy. Not only in Italy, I'm aware of that. Think about all the people who are producing the wines. Wine is still being made. It's a natural product, so it is growing at the moment in the vineyards, and the people have to take care of it. They have produced already the wines of last year, or they are being made at the moment, depending on the wine style, and they do have wines in their cellars. They need to sell it to be able to keep on doing this work. So please drink wine. I know you might have bigger issues at the moment, but maybe think about it. Wine helps you. It is a social thing. In Italy, wine is, not about getting drunk. Definitely not. Italy has one of the lowest alcoholism rates in the whole world, although we have one of the highest per capita wine consumption. So wine, if you're drinking it in company, if you're drinking it with your food, as it's always done in Italy, then it is definitely a beautiful thing that brings us together. The wine that I want to taste today is this one. It's from the Veneto region, one of the hardest hit regions of Italy, north, where Venice is. I think most viewers will be familiar with Venice. So it's the region around Venice. And there is something strange about this bottle that you might have noticed. It has a screw cap. Which is not common in Italy at all.
Right. I was like, I was thinking, I was like, Italians is, we're trusting you.
Yeah. It is, with the denomination rules that we usually have that govern almost all of the Italian wine production. I think there are 2 official denominations, appellations out of the 570 or so that we have that officially do allow a screw cap. The reason this wine has it is, well, there are multiple reasons behind it, but why they can do it is because they are not in the appellation system. They have voluntarily stepped outside of the appellation system because they wanted to do things in a certain way. I'm a big lover of so-called natural wines. I'm a big lover of so-called orange wines or amber wines you might have heard of. Now, the wine is officially actually looking at where it comes from and looking at the grape variety and everything else, it would have been a Soave. I'm sure you're all familiar, my colleagues at least are familiar with the Soave wine from the Veneto region of Italy. You know it as a pretty watery looking and maybe even tasting wine. It can be very, it can be just like this, just drink it away kind of thing. Well.
Wow.
This is my Soave non-Soave. So it is not officially declared the Soave, but for all intents and purposes, it is actually. It is made from the Garganega grape. It is in the Gambellara province where Soave can come from. So it is an amazing wine. And the reason is, it has skin contact. Shall I make a corny joke right now about nowadays we're not allowed to have skin contact, social distancing.
I reposted you.
Skin contact we can have is this kind of skin contact. So for anyone who's not familiar with this idea, I want to keep it simple. Basically, it is a white wine made as if you're making red wine, because usually when you're making white wines, you try to separate the juice from the grapes that you are squeezing, if you will. You want to separate them immediately from the grapes that you are crushing. With red wines, you don't do that. You crush them a little bit, but then you let them steep together, if you will, during which the pigmentation from the skins will bleed into the juice, which is what makes it red. And so if you do it with white grapes, the same procedure as making red wines with white grapes, you end up having this kind of color. Admittedly, this is a pretty extreme example. Not all
Yeah.
skin contact wines are going to be this orange, okay?
Yeah, that's
this
crazy.
one has fermented with skin contact for almost a year in concrete tanks, if you will. So that's a long time. So that's really a lot of pigmentation that has gone into the juice. It is a completely natural wine, meaning the vineyards are biodynamic. So to make it short, again, I could say there are no synthetic chemicals used in these vineyards. And also in the cellar, it is spontaneous fermentation. So meaning no yeast was added to start the fermentation to the grape juice. It started spontaneously with its wild yeasts. And nothing was added, nothing was subtracted from this wine. It is unfiltered. You might see a little bit. It is cloudy looking. And no sulfites were added either. So there are no sulfites added in this wine. So, and the nose is amazing. I don't know, for those of you who might not be familiar with orange wines, they are so much more than regular white wines, you know, like they do not necessarily have that fruity aromas that we usually associate with the white wines. They do have a little bit more going on. There is that, you know, earthiness a little bit. I definitely want to make a point here that because a lot of people think when they see orange wine or when they hear natural wines, they start thinking like, oh, stinky, funky, or things like that. There is none of that in this wine. I have to say, you know, that stinkiness is definitely an issue, can happen in a lot of these natural wines, but it does not have to. A good winemaker will be able to avoid these faulty aromas or keep them to a minimum, if you will. You know, the nose here, I'm getting a little bit of earthiness. There are spices, a ton of spices. It is like going to, I don't know if you've ever been to a Middle Eastern bazaar, you know, a little bit like a curry, you know, because all the spices mixing together, it's like curry. And so this is what I'm getting in here. There's a little bit of cinnamon. There is orange peel, definitely. And beautiful. It's full of aromas, but not necessarily what we might be used to when we are drinking a white wine or when we're drinking a Sommelier. Okay, let me taste it.
That color is amazing. Just taking
I'll keep it in picture. It is, wow, it's amazing. It's very full-bodied. There is some acidity, which you would expect from the region, obviously, being a northern Italian region. But there is also tannins in there, which is, you know, completely unexpected if you are used to white wine having no tannins. Because of the skin contact, obviously, the wine has beautiful tannins in there. So there's like, you know, at the same time, there's so much going on in my palate right now. There is the mouth-watering acidity, but there is also the astringency on other parts of my mouth, especially the front part of my mouth is drying out kind of. And it's a beautiful balance. And immediately I have to start thinking about food. I mean, I always think about food, but this is, you know, like, I was actually not planning to do it today, but maybe tomorrow, like a real Israeli style hummus kind of thing. And then put maybe, you know, long caramelized onions with a little bit of cinnamon, a touch of cinnamon in there, you know, that kind of thing. It would be beautiful. You know, orange wines are actually, in my eyes, some of the most versatile wines out there because they are kind of at that intersection point of white wines and red wines. They do have acidity, they do have tannins, they are full-bodied, they do have a lot of aromas. So yeah, it's a beautiful wine. It is it is saying something without being too loud. Maybe, you know, sometimes red wines can be all like look at me, look at me. It's not necessarily that extreme, but it's beautiful wine that I want to keep on drinking. Actually, when the focus is not on me anymore, I will be drinking more.
Andy, we got a question coming in from Philippe. He asks, how popular is orange wines, the style of orange wines in Italy? I'm more familiar with them from the same region, as well as a lot of Pinot Grigios because of the color coming from the gray skin. So if you want to add to that, he's asking how popular are orange wines in Italy, or other regions that may be noted outside of Friuli as well. That's the ones I'm familiar with.
This one is from Veneto. Friuli, Venezia Giulia is definitely another region that produces a lot of orange wines. And
that's the one.
Romagna, where Nikki is from. Yesterday, Nikki was sitting there. There are a lot of orange wines over there. They're actually, at the moment in Italy, you can find orange wines all over in every wine producing region almost. And what I'm going to say right now, it might not be, I don't have a scientific basis to what I'm going to say now, but I do dare say a little bit Italy might be the renaissance point of orange wines becoming popular in modern winemaking again. It's not a new thing, as you guys all know, but maybe for others who are watching us, it is the oldest style of winemaking, actually. Like the 8,000 years history of winemaking has, for a long time, white wines as we know them today did not exist, and it was all orange wines. And so it was kind of forgotten. It survived, if you will, in Georgia, definitely. Amazing country. I can definitely recommend visiting there, visiting the wineries, the monasteries, especially where the style survived. And then in Friuli, it was actually a Friulian winemaker who visited Georgia in the 90s and remembered things that his grandfather used to make, and kind of started playing around with the style again. Josko Gravner might be also another name that you might look into. So thanks to him, maybe you could say, in Italy, his neighbors started going back to this style as well, and it kind of spread from there. And nowadays, I dare say that Italy is maybe the country where the most orange wines are being made. As I said, I do not have numbers in my hand. I don't know, but this is what it feels like to me, being in the wine business. Slovenia definitely does have a lot of orange wines. Georgia, I already mentioned. So, yeah.
I think that, just to piggyback on that, here in New York, for sure, some people are probably drinking orange wines that don't look that deep in color. So if I have an Italian orange wine, I usually have to actually tell people it's orange. The producer is blowing my mind right now, but there is someone that I used to sell orange wine all the time. And then as soon as like the whole orange wine trend became a thing, in the tasting notes in the wine shop I worked at, we wrote orange is the new white, after the TV show on the tasting notes. And then everybody came in, but the wine's been there forever. Like no one cared about the wine, or we had to always hand sell it at the shop. And then as soon as now the craze about orange wines, we couldn't keep the wine on the shelf. So it's just one of those things about just kind of, and because that one, like yours, is really dark. If we had it open for a tasting, people wouldn't even know it was orange unless we said that it was. Sure. And obviously, it's much cooler to say orange wine than saying, oh, try our new white skin contact, They're like, I don't know what that means, So, but when we start calling it orange, I think that's now one of those buzzwords and terms in the industry that all consumer level is now into, and so therefore they are more interested in buying that wine. So not that it sat on the shelf because it was a Pinot Grigio, it's just that people didn't care about it as much until we wrote this little slogan, orange is the new white. And then everybody now fell in love with it, Yeah. So yeah.
So actually, you're definitely much more knowledgeable than me about the Portuguese wines. I did see some orange wines in Portugal during the time that I was there. So it is a thing there as well. Could you?
Yes, for sure. No, in Portugal for sure, and I'm sure Philippe knows as well that a lot of producers are doing skin contact white, but for the most part, when we talk about mass market, those wines are not the wines I can find in London or in New York City. So I think the consumer will probably have more of they will have more of an opportunity if they never had orange wine, find Italian orange wines in major cities around the world outside of the country that they're in. So, so I think that's the perception, right? So for Philippe, obviously he's used to having Portuguese orange wines, but he probably wouldn't know where to find an Italian one, being based in Portugal. But In our case as well, I don't know if you want to add to that. For London, do you see more Italian orange wines on the menus these days, or whereabouts are they all just coming from Eastern Europe?
I think it's just a general. It's the same as I'd say New York is a lot from Eastern Europe, and from Italy as well. You start to see a lot from there. But yeah, I mean, it's still not a huge market. It's still very niche. The only people that really know it would drink it, which would be people like us or people that have a bit more educated. But it is definitely a growing thing, especially when they're made in such a way like the wine Hande's got, where it is made in a controlled way and it isn't too overly, oxidative, but you still have that fruit character and that real depth of flavor. I think it will surprise a lot of people and they actually do try it. And it's like getting a general term for it as well. So there's so many different names like natural wine, orange wine, all this sort of stuff. But it's like, I think if there's something that can be a little bit more of a term for it, would help with, identifying exactly what it is for the consumer, especially if it's first time, to make it so kind of less of a hand sell. Because I think some of the wines, when they're made properly like that, is some of the best you can get, especially for food and wine pairing. It's almost endless. You can really have a lot of fun with it. So yeah, no, I'm a big fan of those wines. But again, it's definitely, you'll have a few places in London that do specialize in sort of natural, organic, biodynamic and things like that. Definitely more of an up and coming thing, but it's still not kind of there from my perspective anyway.
Yeah, I think the only place where I actually saw in the market, I was in Ukraine for wine actually this in September, right around harvest time, and it took me to the largest like a world market of wine. It was kind of insane, and you can imagine because the special location that Ukraine is in it could touch Georgia in 5 seconds, and so they have all of these wines from Azerbaijan, and I'm like, oh, I'm in a whole nother. I'm like, my knowledge is real limited in the middle of they have French wines, Spanish wines, but the same quantity from wines from around the Black Sea region. So it was a lot more. Most orange wines I've ever seen that it had its own section, in the market. And that's why I was like, oh yeah, this is the home of it, like how Andy was speaking of earlier. So they definitely have a whole area just dedicated to orange. It was called the orange wine aisle, actually. So that was the most I've ever seen of orange wine in one area. So in one shop, I should say. But
last summer, for a month, I was in Estonia, in Tallinn. And I found this tiny little one-man operation making khachapuri at a market there. So I went there a couple of times because I love khachapuri, and eating that and everything. At one point, he asked me like, "Hey, would you like to have some wine? I make some wine." I'm like, "Oh yeah, of course. Hey, bring it on." And the gentleman was from Georgia, and he took a bottle out of his fridge, and it was an orange wine. It was as dark as this one. And it was like, yeah, this is the way I learned it from my dad, and this is how I make it. And for him, it was the only way a wine could be. It's for some cultures, that's the wine. There's nothing else.
Zoltan, if you want to pick up with your wine.
Yeah, just let me know in Spain too. The first orange wine started to made in 1860. South of Spain has an appellation which is called Condado de Huelva. Mm-hmm. They're very, very famous for orange wine. And then, of course, in Catalonia, some producers, Alicante, they are making very incredible stuff. Okay.
Type that in the chat when you get a second, when you finished.
Exactly. I will put it. Okay. So you guys can see my wine clearly.
Your hands, move the hands.
Yeah. Move my hands. Let's see. I bring you a Pinot Noir, which, as you know, in Italy, it's called Pinot Nero, right? From Lombardy, which is one of the richest Italian region. And I'm sure you guys agree with me. And it's a territory with a very unique climate, okay? And I bring you wine from Marchese di Montalto. It's a viticulture from 1890. So as in Italy, most of the families have a lot of history there, no? and I think they are working very well. So this wine is bottled in Pavia, which is 45 kilometers from Milano, okay? From northern Italy. We are supporting Italy, but I think this time it's much better to support the northern part. Of course, we have to support everybody in the world, but this time it goes to Italy, okay? 100% Pinot Noir. It's a very tiny plot, tiny compared to what the family has. It's a 20 acre, and they start harvest in February. They start usually in February to follow the harvest for the 45 days market after to have the best thing. But the most important thing about this wine and what I love, it's for me, it's like a juice, you know? So for this time of the year where you can serve wines a little bit more chilled, because in Barcelona, I don't know where you guys are, how it's going now on, but the weather is very good. Today I was sitting out in my terrace. Now it's getting a little bit cloudy, but it was perfect to serve it a little bit chilled. Because this type of wine and Pinot Noir, who's not as strong skin, who's more light, you know, but can has very perfumed, all kind of aromas and spicy, you know, that's what I love about. For example, the black cherry is like you feel it really drinking the juice. It's a very unique and special wine. In general, I call it a barbecue wine. When imagine you have at home 20 people, no, coming over, you cannot buy a super expensive wine for everybody, right? And in generally, you use this kind of wine, which is around 10 euros in a wine shop, but I think most of the people will love it. You know, we call it a 10 wine, which you offer it to 10 people, and definitely maybe 10 of them, they will love it. And finally,
I like that. 10 wine.
Yeah,
exactly. No, in generally, what we love about when I will taste it, I already tasted because you guys talking and it's so interesting listening to you. Always the wine make it more interesting, no? It's a decisively very floral and fruity, okay? And slightly, what I love about it's a little bit vinous. You guys understand vinous?
Viscous?
Venus.
Vinous?
Yeah.
Like licorice, but you know.
Licorice, okay, yeah, okay.
That's the, let's say, typical and very interesting about this wine. And then in palate, I already tasted. What I love, it's soft, you know. It's that first touch with somebody give it to you, like the first, you know, skin contact you were talking about before. But it's nice to go into your palate very softly, and then definitely has a very intense aroma, and that's what I love about. And in generally, then comes out all of this currant, the berries, blackberries, the cassis flavor. In general, if you guys don't find all of this in a wine, don't be scared. You know, people who we are professionals in the wine industry, sometimes we found aromas, which for some of you, it's super hard to understand, no? Because I understand sometimes we give description, which for some people is super hard. But these 3, 4, I was finding like red berries, blackberries, cassis. I think it's very typical for the grape and for this wine. Okay, and what I love in general to pair with, when you know in a barbecue are so many foods, so many things, but I was telling you I love it to serve it more chilled or cold, and I think goes very well with tasty soups, which in the Mediterranean part is very common, and fresh cheeses. As an aperitif, I think it's very interesting to taste it, and it's a very good pairing when nowadays everybody's looking, oh my God, which wine we should have with this, which I always say the wine better pairs with a very good company always, no? Which is the most important thing.
Definitely.
Perfect. I think your wine may be a little bit more, we're going in order of actual palate here. So I think I may go before you. So
Okay.
I think you got the big daddy today. Let me do a little. Label, of course. Switching views. And there we go. I feel like a magician almost too. Like,
Still can't see it.
I try all the time.
Hold your hand on that side.
Yes. There we go.
Yeah.
Perfect. So if you didn't see from that, or at least you can see this guy. You know who that is. So we have a Chianti Classico Reserva, 24 months aging DOCG from Vigina Cassi. And they're unique because I feel like one of my favorite ones, which I didn't get my hands on in time for the tasting, in comparison to that, is usually a lot more showing color, a lot more deeper in color. So I was very taken aback. It's a 2016 vintage to see how light it was. And I think that's just tells you, oh yeah, we got the 2 light reds, me and Zoltan. So just to tell you about the Sangiovese, this is 100%. So in Chianti, you actually can put smaller amounts in it for the blending, but for the reserva, they usually go 100% in. This is a smaller producer. The notes on it was immediately cranberries. I actually had my family taste it with me earlier, so we started sharing because I was like, we don't know how sick anyone is right now. So pick up, like, I just need to make sure we're all on the same page. Like, yeah, I smell that. Yeah. So a lot cranberries first note. I usually get tomatoes, and I feel like this one is more subtle on the tomatoes than the typical Chianti that I have. I love the lightness on the color. Still, it's probably one of the lightest Chiantis I've seen in a long time. And I think that immediately I go with pizzas for pairing. And you can tell that on the palate, which I've had earlier, the savory actually picks up. So on the nose is way more fruity. And then on the palate, it ends up balancing out with some savory notes with like a tomato leaf, you like saying as well. So on the green note, you get this subtle, almost like, like a kale chips. So I like saying cooked kale, but I don't know if everyone's used to like actually having them sauteed in the pan, but you actually know that same smell that you would get, or if you have a kale chip, that saltiness ends up coming up on the palate more than it is on the nose. So I'm enjoying it. I haven't been drinking a lot of it. I'm balancing my immune system. I was like, this is almost like a joke, because in our heads we're like, you know how much wine I would actually like taste in a day at a regular tasting, like in person. So now I'm balancing my immune system. I'm being responsible for COVID-19. And it says, because I have the notes from the producer, 50% ages in 18 months in oak barrels, and the other 50% matures in large barriques. And everything is hand harvested. It's a tiny, they actually, unlike the other older vineyards in this area, and if you don't know, sorry if I didn't say that, Chianti is in Tuscany, and this is from 1990. So this is actually a much younger producer in that area too. So so supporting small, these new, and that may have a lot to say about the winemaker. So I'm interested in looking up as well more about his style. And that's what Hande noted on, is that the innovation that's happening in Italy with newer producers. So they are the ones who have inherited land and are doing the same thing their grandfather's grandfather did for years. And then there are new producers doing new things, even in Chianti, sharing styles that are not, it can age up to 10 years, right? Especially a reserva level Chianti. For anyone who's still, if you like my mother, I don't know what is aging in some of these bottles here. A lot of people are very much like, ooh, I went to Italy, I'm going to hold on to this bottle. I'm like, no, girl, drink now. That's not an ageable wine. And I think we have to get that out of our heads too, for those non-professionals who are always like, oh, I love that, I'm just going to save this. All of it's not meant for saving. Chianti is one of those ones that will develop amazingly over time, especially at the reserva level. And so I love sharing it with folks. So I'm looking at I don't know if you can see it's too clear. Okay. I'm watching the legs go slowly. So just talking about the viscosity, or what I'm mistaken for Zoltan earlier, you can feel it on the mouth. The tannins here is actually super balanced. I think that it's weird because even though my palate may be shifting because of colds and everything else with the season, I feel like I have more intense powers with the mouthfeel. I was explaining it to friends the other day. I can feel acid like on 100 now, and I'm more sensitive to tannins now than I was before. I guess because I would normally have all the flavors on top of the tannins, and so you have to decipher every little nuance. But now I'm struggling with the flavors, but now I'm picking up everything that my mouth is feeling more intensely. So the tannins is so round and nice and coating perfectly. And the viscosity that you can see from the glass is exactly what I actually feel on my palate. So it's pretty cool to actually have that effect. So I don't know if the virus is sending out special powers to folks, but I'll take it, so we all gonna come out as a new mutated palate version. We'll go next and talk about
You've got my palate, I think, yeah.
I don't want whatever Will got, I don't want it, but I want to be able to, like, you know, smell intensely, you know, like my dog. And, you know, who knows, by the end of all of this United We Taste, we may be getting sponsors by, by some folks because of this. But yeah, so Chianti, I think most people, even if they don't know much about Italian wines, they know. So I picked that. But people need to understand the difference between aging at every level of Chianti. And some people don't realize that Sangiovese is the grape. So I wanted to kind of highlight the name of the grape for when people are looking for food pairings. And yeah, it's usually my go-to pizza wine. I guess all reds from Italy is easy to say it's good with pizza, but anything pasta, pizza, red sauce, I usually just pick Sangiovese or Super Tuscan if I'm feeling dangerous. So yeah, that's my wine this year.
Okay, so my wine then, as you haven't picked up, I have a bit of an issue right now as I can't taste. I think my smell and palate has been sent to charge. She's getting at least heightened things. So I'm really gutted I can't, because this wine I've got today is the Travanglini. It's from Gattinara, Trevine, 2013. It's just a super amazing wine, and it's been one of the wines that's always just stuck in my head since the first time just seeing the bottle, which is quite an unusual shape.
So it's flat?
It's basically, it has the more curvaceous side to it. So it just traps the sediment. So you don't need to...
Wait a minute.
Decanter.
It's actually, cool. I think they've trademarked the bottle, and you only find it from this producer.
Yeah. But then you did, when you did it this way, sideways? No, when you held it like this, yeah, it's flat, right? On the back?
It's kind of flat, but it has a slight curve here. It dips in slightly there, just so when you can hold it, and it just.
I like wine producers that think about, you know, us. You know, I'm on the floor struggling. You know, I'm trying to make it look sexy. So this is cool.
Yeah, it's a really cool thing. And another thing what I really like as well is it's from Nebbiolo. It's a Nebbiolo is the main grape variety they use. Not a massive production either. This particular one is only made in the best vintages from 3 different vineyards. And there's a lot of care and attention that goes into it. But instead of having something from Barolo, I always like to look around those areas that use the same grape variety. They treat it exactly the same. They have the same age or older vines sometimes, and you get just as good a wine without this hefty price tag. Yes. It's very similar to like Burgundy as well. It's always good to find a producer you like. Start off the entry level and then kind of work your way up a little bit, but just explore around these areas, because just because one area has this fame, you know, you actually find more likely that there's other small areas around them that have the same grape variety and the same sort of care and attention and tradition in the wine making as well. So just a few notes on the wine itself. So we're in the northern Piedmont area, which is probably quite a high risk zone at the moment. 100% Nebbiolo. It says ancient vineyards. I don't know exactly how old the